When the show launched, Netflix didn't tell us the ad spend that they put towards the billboards. And we were driving towards Good Morning America early in the morning. And then all of a sudden, I think Tan noticed, he was like, wait, we're on that billboard, on that bus stop. And I was like, no, wait, we're on that one as well. And it was on every single one. And then leading to Times Square, we were on double jumbotrons. I was like, what have I done?
Welcome to Salon Talks. I'm Mary Elizabeth Williams, and this lovely man next to me is Antoni Porowski. How'd I do with the last name?
You crushed it.
Oh, thank you.
No
okay.
notes.
Okay. I really want to crush it. Okay. I care about doing well. He's a best-selling author. He's an actor. Of course, he's a TV host. He's an entrepreneur. He's a food and wine expert. He's our food and wine expert. You know him, of course, from the multiple Emmy winning, like so many Emmys, Queer Eye now in its 9th season. But now he is the host and executive producer of this amazing National Geographic show called No Taste Like Home with Antoni Porowski.
No way to make me blush with like listing out all of the things as I take another sip of my coffee.
It's all true. It's all good. All right, let's start with this lovely show. Were you and 6 of the best looking people in the world go to the...
Objectively speaking,
like quantifiably, best looking people in the world, go to these beautiful places and eat beautiful food, but there's a real depth and heart to it. Tell me about this show.
I mean, it's a very, the irony is like, you're describing the beautiful optics of like a National Geographic show and all this like stunning talent and everything, but it was a deeply personal journey where we started out with every single one of these guests and in asking them like a dish that shaped them growing up, something that they remember from childhood. And it could be either from like a special occasion, like a special family holiday, or it could be just like a normal weekly night meal that their mom or their dad made for them or their grandparent. And we go to their country of origin, we explore their family history through food. So we kind of unpack the dish. We look at like what was going on culturally, politically, socially at the time. And then we kind of hone in with an incredible research team I can take zero credit for, 3 to 6 months research for every single episode to like uncover all these different, these they're not characters because they're real people, but like these people and their family that they didn't even know existed.
Take them back and through the medium of food. What is it about having that through line of food as a way of connecting to our ancestors, the things they went through, the struggles they endured? Why use food? I mean, aside from the fact that you're a food guy, but...
I mean, so I had no idea how deep we would actually go. Of course, I had my hopes, but I didn't know what the research team would be able to come up with. But as a jumping off point, for me, it's literally like how I navigate the universe. It's how I was raised to be. When I go to someone's house, I immediately look through their fridge. It's like looking through their diary. And asking people about their relationship with it, because it tells you about the type of lives that they lead now. It can tell you about provenance, about like where they come from and their ancestry. And it also kind of dictates where we're heading as well. And it's so much more than just the dish. It is this historical, deeply emotional thing that we all have. And every single person has their own version of that, no matter how humble or how complicated the dish is.
And it's a way of, for these people, these 6 people, of finding out things about themselves they never knew.
Yeah.
That's intense. Was there a moment on this journey that you really felt like, oh my God, maybe we've gone too far. Maybe we're going to touch something, a nerve in someone that we can't untouch?
I would say, I mean, first off, hats off to all of them. None of them knew what we were doing on a daily basis. They knew which city we were going to be in, but they truly signed up for, it was going to be a mystery to them. And I think for actors, especially who are used to having lines to rehearse and certain like start and end times, it kind of like took them a day to kind of shed that a little bit. But I kept on reminding them sort of like, I only want this to feel like a gift for you. I want this to be something that you're able to pass on. Where I was a little anxious was, I think with the Awkwafina episode, I think it was such a sensitive subject matter. I mean, she'd lost her mother when she was 4 years old. She hadn't been back to South Korea since. Her mother was South Korean. And so I definitely wanted to provide her with a little bit more information. But even there, it's like you never really know what you're going to uncover, because we started out with this dish that her paternal grandmother made for her. And her paternal grandmother is Chinese American, but she made her jjajangmyeon. I'm butchering the pronunciation a little bit. but this traditional South Korean dish so that Nora would remember her mom. But then halfway through the episode, we're there learning about this beautiful kelp soup with these thin pieces of beef that's rehydrated with this dry kelp, and there's a whole beautiful story behind it. But when Nora kind of like, I could cry if I'm not caffeinated enough to not talk about it without getting emotional, but she smelled the scent that was just like that was coming off of the pot. She remembered that smell from when she was a kid. And then you learn that in Korean history, mothers prepare this for themselves to heal themselves after they give birth, and also teach it to their daughters, and to have this woman teaching her. And it was linked to mythology because they used to watch whales giving birth and be depleted of iron, so they would eat kelp. So there's this, it's just such a loaded, beautiful thing. And I mean, I cried so hard by the end of it. Nora actually had to take care of me, which I was so embarrassed about, and because this was really about her. But that's just what a great person she was. And so with her, it was something that it was a journey that she wanted to go on, but I think it's one of those classic things in life where you know that you have to get through something that you want to, but it's really painful as well. But what's on the other side can be really beautiful, what you end up discovering. And I think that was just a shining example of that in action.
Well, what she says in that episode is when she tastes it and she says, this feels like home. This is home. And this is a show that really feels very, very topical right now because it's interrogating the idea of home.
Right.
Where we are in the world, where we come from, what is our home? Right. What do you think a show like this has to say about helping us understand that right now?
I think understanding, and hopefully the takeaway is embracing it. Every single person on the show, including myself and you at some point, we are all the descendants of immigrants. And you're right, like it's something that, you know, it touches a chord with me because it's like I feel like a lot of people are forgetting that right now, and we kind of have to remember that we're all here because of other people who've made like great sacrifices. And I think it's just about leaning into really embracing that diversity, not just tolerating it or accepting it, but seeing it for the beauty that it has. And the gifts that all of us have of, you know, I joke with my friends a lot about generational trauma. It's like our favorite topic of conversation for all my therapized friends. But I feel like we don't talk enough about generational gifts, about the things like, why are we the way that we are? Why am I so obsessed with food? I don't really know. I can tell you why my parents are, but I haven't gone back a few generations. And so I think it is especially just kind of, you know, with where we're at as a culture right now, like I feel like we're just at these like polar opposites, and like no one's like stepping towards the center. That to find universal threads for me is like what gives me a bit of hope for the next 4 years and beyond. So yeah, I just think it's entertaining, but it's also incredibly important.
Yeah. And part of the important work you do beyond this is also you work with the United Nations food program in places like Senegal, where you took Issa Rae. Tell me a little bit about what that work is and what you're doing, especially now at a moment where so many federal programs are being cut off.
Totally.
The need for these kinds of programs.
I mean, I think that all came to be just from my time in Senegal. They had reached out and asked if I would ever consider going back, and I was like, let's go yesterday. And so we started, we made an announcement about a donation at Global Citizen in Central Park this past summer, and then we started having conversations about how we could work together in a meaningful way. And what really touched me about their work is a lot of, they deal with like fortification of rice to make sure the kids get like the nutrients and the minerals that they need, but specifically keeping girls in school long enough so that they not only learn, you know, sustainable harvesting and agriculture practices, but they take these lessons on how to prepare food back home that they can teach their parents, who a lot of them didn't have the education to have that knowledge, and just keeping them in school so we can assure like the highest chance of them getting a job later on. And you know, so it's I think it's incredibly important, and it's like as much apologies, but as a dumpster fire as this country is right now, I think it's important to also remember that there's a whole world out there. I think for me, selfishly, in like a very personal way, it reminds me that there are people who are thriving, who are suffering, who are living, loving, like doing all of that outside of this like centerpiece, this bubble that I'm in New York. You know, it's a good like perspective building exercise. And I think that it's important for a lot of people to just like pay attention to what's going on out there in the world too.
And connecting those dots, that being involved in food means also being involved in education, which
Yes.
means also being involved. Like they're all connected to each other.
Of course, absolutely.
So speaking of the dumpster fire,
Mm-hmm.
let's talk a little bit about that. Let's get into it. First of all, I just want to ask, how are you doing, my Canadian friend? What are you thinking? I want to know. Someone from north of the border.
Mm-hmm.
What is going through your mind these days, Antoni?
Oh, with the whole, well, I do like to joke that I still maintain my Canadian citizenship. Even though I love this country so much, it's afforded me a life beyond my wildest dreams. But I think it's one of those reminders where you I have to kind of like reposition my thinking into the realization that it's like the people are not the government. And there are a lot of people who have certainly led to where we are right now. At the same time, there are others who have different values. And so it's definitely scary. Humor is very helpful to me. I really hope Canada remains as independent and part of the Commonwealth moving forward. I just don't see that as a possibility of changing. And I think Trudeau, said some really smart words in to that effect. But it's just very weird and it's very strange. And I laugh about it, but then when I sit in my feelings, it's like, okay, this is actually like pretty terrifying. So I'm kind of like at this like weird catch-22 and being torn in two different directions of sort of like, you can't take this too seriously, keep one foot in front of the other and focus on the things that I can control, but also paying attention to like very scary things that are happening.
Yeah. Now, Queer Eye premiered during the first Trump administration, made a big splat, was a big deal at the moment. Now here we are again, new season, now it's now he's number 47.
And it's the same administration.
What feels different now about this show, about the need for it, about the audience for it, about the message for it 8 years later?
I think it's a reminder, I'm going to butcher his words, but Obama said something about like, we'll take one step forward and 4 steps back. And it's sort of like, oh, that's what you meant. And so I feel like, again, it's for me, it's leaning into the things that, it's knowing the difference between the things I can control and the things I can't control. And I'm still part of Queer Eye. The show is still continuing. I hope we get another season, maybe 5 more. Let's go. What I can control is the ability to tell diverse stories through food and offer people a platform to be able to do that. And in Vegas, we kind of decided to take the perspective of like, yes, it's this big neon colossus of a Dubai in the center of the desert, but it's a living, breathing city with people who keep it alive, who have lost so much during the pandemic. And now, back to immigrants whose like rights are being taken away and families are being separated. So I think it's important to tell those stories because we have to take concepts to the people who don't understand and learn that behind those concepts, there are living, breathing individuals who are doing the best that they can with what the resources that they have or don't. And so I feel like it's like a renewed sense of responsibility, I think is the short answer to your question that I spent 5 minutes answering.
We're here to listen to you, man. Well, speaking of that, I mean, when you talk about people using their resources, when the show first debuted, I think a lot of people didn't understand that. And certainly with what you were doing, this is not Master Chef. This is where you're trying to teach people who maybe don't know how to cook, What did you feel about the reactions that people got who maybe didn't get the memo on what this show was, or whose homes you were going into and whose lives you were going into?
Do you mean like specifically people who had critiques over the things that I was teaching?
Yeah, the guacamole.
Let's get into it. Like the guacamole. I think, look, it affected me at the beginning in a really big way. And the thing my therapist told me from the get-go was like, Ant, this is going to be like one of your biggest lessons in life, because as someone who really cares what people think about him, you're going to have to learn how to either like re-navigate your attention and kind of like take the good with the not so good. And people are entitled to their opinions. I mean, I can't be loved by everyone. I'm not Ina Garden. None of us are, unfortunately. But I think this is, I can actually credit our showrunner, Jen Lane, because I came back after a lot had happened, seasons 1 and 2. And I wanted to make a cassoulet when I was back in Kansas City. And she's like, Aunt, what are you doing showing a recipe that has like 18 different ingredients and is going to be a whole day in front of like the stove. Also, how are we going to film this? And like, is this you actually wanting to serve the hero, the person that we're helping this week, or is this like your ego right now? And I was like, you're right. And it's a reminder to just like meet people where they're at, because it's so easy for me to just get fueled by like, I need to show them that I can actually like make a proper mirepoix with my eyes closed. Not that I would ever want to do that with my eyes closed, but anyway, and it's about servicing, being of service to the person who we're with for such a short amount of time. And it's just staying in my lane and learning to, you know, get rid of the clutter, which I've gotten so much better at. I'm so much better at not looking at comments anymore, thank goodness.
Yeah, I imagine it's a learning curve. I want to ask you one more thing about that, because Queer Eye to me is one of the few things I can think of as like truly overnight stardom for all of you. Like that word gets thrown a lot, but you truly became overnight stars. You were a guy working acting, working in food service.
Yeah.
What is that like when suddenly, boom, you're on a show and people know who you are, have thoughts about you, but also love you. People love you, Antoni. What is that like to take all that on really immediately?
On one end, yes, it was overnight, but at the same time, I sort of like internally like scoff a little, because it was like 10 years in the making. I was planning a completely different trajectory to my career, which is life is what happens when you're making plans, right? And so on one end, it was sort of like, no, it like took a while to get here. But on another front, it did feel like it happened almost instantly. I remember I was in the middle of, we finished seasons 1 and 2, which we filmed simultaneously in Atlanta. And then I had this 5-month gap of not really being able to work. So I decided to take Italian lessons. And the day that a publication, I believe it was Entertainment Weekly, announced our names. And I don't think I'd had my last name on Instagram at that point. And I literally went from like 500 followers to like 70,000. And my notifications were on my phone. So it was glowing until the battery just kind of died. And then the day when the show launched, Netflix didn't tell us the ad spend that they put towards the billboards. And we were driving towards Good Morning America early in the morning. And then all of a sudden, I think Tan noticed, he was like, wait, we're on that billboard on that bus stop. And I was like, no, wait, we're on that one as well. And it was on every single one. And then leading to Times Square, we were on double jumbotrons. And I remember this sense of shock and fear where I was like, what have I done? Like, I'm not anonymous anymore. My face is out there. And I was like, Aunt, but you've wanted this since you were a little kid. Pathological need to be seen because you're the youngest of 3. But then it's sort of like, oh my gosh, this is a weird comparison, but a mentor of mine compared it to this whole overnight syndrome of like just suddenly being so exposed. He was like, it's like losing your virginity. Like once your anonymity is gone, it's gone. And it's kind of like that. And it's going to be a very complex, beautiful, sad, heartbreaking, devastating, joyous, thrilling journey. But like once it's gone, it's gone. And you just kind of have to like mourn that and accept this new normal of who you are. Because my thing was like, I don't want to change. I'm going to stay exactly the same. And I thought I was being like humble and evolved. And a friend in my board of directors, like my trusted circle, was like, no, you have to accept the fact that like your entire life is changing and how you navigate and the decisions you make. And it's going to come with like beautiful things and things that are going to be really more challenging to deal with. But it's this.
Right. Well, speaking of that, I want to ask you one more thing, because you also started out as an actor, as a performer. You know, we know that you were in You Need to Calm Down with Taylor back in 2019, but that was not your first brush with Taylor.
No.
I want to ask about it because you could have been.
Could have been.
It might have been you.
Blank space.
Blank space. Yeah. Tell me about your first brush with Taylor.
So I didn't meet her, because she obviously wasn't at the casting, understandably. She's a very busy woman, dominating everything that she does with like such grace and dignity. She's just amazing. But I was auditioning. I was with another agency. I was still waiting tables at Bond Street. And I got a casting call for a music video, and we only found out what it was. I think it was the audition when I got called back. And they put us in all these different scenarios where I was like running away from a lion and acting scared. And I went back for the second one, which when you get a call back is like the best. And then I didn't get it.
But you had
it all worked out.
You had a date with fate anyway.
You know what? Maybe it prepared me for when we got the call and then they were like, Taylor wants you to be in her new music video. And it kind of like relieved a bit of the tension. Everything really does happen in life the way that it's supposed to. And I think that's like a good reminder, especially for me today, of like, it might not make sense at the time, but when you look back, it's going to be like, yeah, like that was all your higher power's plan, or whoever it is that you worship.
You gotta take a step back.
Yeah.
See the whole picture, right?
Let time do its thing.
It's so hard,
I
right?
know it is hard. When you're in it, it's impossible.
We're all really impatient.
I know.
We're really impatient.
Especially as New Yorkers.
Oh my God. And you're a Canadian New Yorker, so
yes,
still counts. All right, but in the meantime, we can all watch No Taste Like Home with Antoni Porowski. I love this show so much. You gonna do more?
Thank you. I really hope
Okay,
so.
good.
As long as Nat Geo gives us a season 2, I'm down.
There are more good-looking
They
people.
already know I'm ready. I'm
Okay.
like, my passport's been renewed. We're ready for season 2. Let's go.
All right. I can't wait. Thank you so much, Antoni.
Thank you. This has been really lovely.
Thank you for watching Salon Talks. If you had a good time, why not subscribe right over here so you can get more conversations with your favorite artists, actors, directors, writers, comedians, musicians, politicians, everybody you love, and I love too. And while you're here, why not watch another video right now?